Welcome back to More Food. Today we're going to make a cauliflower soup. It is keto friendly and very low carb. So I've got my ranch rider, I've got the mise en place, I have a pack of bacon that I chopped and it is going in the Dutch oven behind me, and we're going to use that to top the soup later. I've got one onion already cut here, and we'll go ahead and cut another one. This recipe calls for 2 onions. I always prefer yellow onions just because I think they're the most versatile. This is super flavorful and it's a really good replacement for potato soup. Honestly, like it's really hard to even tell the difference. So I love making this when it's cold outside, or I'm really feeling like a hearty soup, but I'm dieting. So this is one of my absolute favorites to make. All right, I'm gonna just roughly chop 2 onions. And then we're gonna cook this later in the bacon fat once we remove the bacon. And it's gonna be really rich and flavorful with not that many ingredients, and it's pretty quick, simple, and it's relatively cheap to do as well. Okay, so we have our second onion going into the bowl. And now we're gonna go through and do our 2 cauliflower. It takes 2 heads of cauliflower. I seem to always have cauliflower around because there's just so much you can do with it. You can make, you know, any kind of mash replacement. You can do so much with it. So I usually have this around all the time, and I love to be able to whip together some soup or make some, you know, loaded cauliflower with cheese or bacon. But this really is just the perfect replacement for potatoes when you're going through and craving a good soup. So look at these all nice up. It really doesn't need to be finely chopped. We're gonna boil it later, and then ultimately it'll be, get that stem out of there. Ultimately it'll be blended, really creamy, so you don't have to worry about getting it too fine. Just a rough chop. I actually have a good amount of cauliflower in my garden, but I'm hoping I get them to grow a little bit bigger before I have to harvest them. So these are just regular old grocery store cauliflower. So that's one. We're gonna go ahead and do the other, and then I'll check back in with you guys. All right, so we've got the bacon pieces are all done, and I'm just gonna drain them in this paper towel. It's already bite-sized pieces, so this will be perfect later when we're topping the soup. And it's really important that you leave as much of the bacon fat in here as you can, because we're gonna use that as the fat that we cook all of these veggies in. So we really want to keep as much as we can in there, and it's going to leave such a rich flavor in the soup. So it's really important that we keep that in there. All right, so we're going to set that aside. Return this back to the stove, and then I am going to come and prepare just a few garlic cloves for the soup. I'm gonna put these in first. Since we're gonna blend it, I'm just going to smash these, and then I'll just roughly chop. I'm not going to worry about mincing them too finely. We're gonna get these cut up so we can get them in that bacon fat, and it'll start cooking and start smelling so good very soon. So. All right, now that we have these going, I'm going to put the garlic in, get that sizzling for about a minute, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in the 2 onions and the 2 cauliflower, and we'll check back in then. All right, I've got our onions sweating here in the bacon fat, and they're starting to get translucent, which means it's about time to put in the cauliflower. So I'm gonna add in the 2 heads of cauliflower that we diced. Give that a mix. And then I'm gonna add in our chicken broth. I always get low sodium because I like to be able to control the salt myself. You can't take salt out, so this is the best, I think that's the best approach. The recipe calls for 2 48-ounce containers, but I only had 32 ounce, so we're just gonna go with 2.5 32-ounce ones. And you can kind of eyeball it, that's what I end up doing. And then once we get all of this in there, we will let this just simmer on medium heat. That's about half. I'm gonna turn this up to, 4 or 5. And I'm gonna let this simmer, and then I will season it, blend, and add everything else later on. But make sure when you pour in the chicken broth, it almost deglazes the bottom. So go ahead and scrape all of that fond, which is the residue from the bacon earlier that we were cooking. It's stuck to the bottom, so when you add in the chicken broth, you can just scrape the bottom and it helps get some of that flavor and seasoning out of there. So that looks good. I am going to partially cover this so that some steam can get out, and just keep an eye on it. It'll cook for about 40 minutes. I will check back in then. All right, so we've got our cauliflower soup looking really good. It has been 40 minutes simmering, and you can see that the cauliflower is just falling apart. That's good. We want it to be a little mushy. So what we're gonna do is we are going to hit it with 2 cups of heavy cream. I'm gonna pour that in, and then we're gonna let this simmer for just a few more minutes. I'm gonna add in some seasoning too. So we'll start with about 2 teaspoons of salt. We can always add more later, but for now I'm gonna just start with that. And then we're gonna do some crushed black pepper. You want plenty of that in there. All right. So I'm gonna stir this all together, and then I'm going to turn this up a little bit to get it to a boil. Once it boils for a couple minutes, I'll turn it off, and then I'm going to put it in the blender, and we'll blend it up and serve it. Now I will check back in with you when we are ready to blend. All right, so I have the soup in this blender. We're going to put the cap on and blend this until smooth. Starting on the lowest setting and then getting it all the way up to 10. So smooth, looks so good. I'm gonna give it just a couple more seconds. All right, that looks amazing. And so for toppings, I have bacon that we cooked earlier, I have cheese, and I have some green onions that I cut up from my garden. So I'm going to just pour some soup into here. It's going to be, oh, look at that. Oh, looks like velvet. Okay, so I'm gonna grab some more pepper really quick because I think it'll look really nice and taste really good just to have a little bit of extra pepper on top. We're gonna do a good dollop of bacon. We're gonna do some cheese, and we're gonna finish with some green onion. There you go, we have cauliflower soup. It's relatively low carb. There are some carbs in onions, but it's relatively low carb. So I hope you enjoy and stay warm.